Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, live show number 412. I am your host, Lauren Gray. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is a uniquely special day, which is the inspiration of today's topic, and that is that it's the last day of June 2023. Why is that so special and unique? In the world that we live in for digital marketing, this is the end of an era. This is the end of Universal Analytics with Google being their program of platform of choice, their lead program. Um, as of after this date, it is now no longer supported, which also got translated earlier this year to not being left on. Going dark. If anybody hasn't, if you've been living under the rock, proverbially, so to speak, and haven't gone to your analytics for any reason directly, you would have not noticed the big red banner on the top of your analytics platform saying that this platform is going to shut down as of July 1st and data will no longer be shown, not just sunsetted, which was a wake up call. We've mentioned this on the show before. A wake up call to a lot of people. They thought that it was going to get handled a lot like Windows 10 or Windows 11, that it was no longer being supported, which means it still ran. It's just things would begin to break on it. Well, no, Google is actually darkening it. As of tomorrow, you will no longer have the dashboard you have today. For those that have been planning for this day since the inception of the discussion of GA4 over 2 years ago, it's just a day that people stop bugging them about a platform they know that they don't or shouldn't invest time in keeping running because it was going to die today. For those that were made recently aware that they need to do something, it's a scary time of losing your year-over-year data because, well, that's fair to a point to say there are fractional parts of data that do remain. But the way that they assimilate the data, connect to the data, use the data, if they have BI tools that drag data, if they were late to joining the data, move over to GA4, setting up GA4, and correctly identifying data layers in GA4, that they will lose any data prior to them doing that because there is no data for GA4 to draw from that was structured in GA formatting, which is data dimensions, unlike session-based Universal Analytics. And so for that reason, there'll be a dark hole. Hopefully, preemptively, agencies retrieved their legacy data beyond the reporting structure that it kind of lands in perpetuity. Actually, reportings don't land in perpetuity. Other data sources land in perpetuity. But the modality of comparing last year's year-over-year data in Universal Analytics compared to data this year, now garnered in GA4 data dimensions, will always be different. There will always be a variance that has to be explained because of the modality of how the data is now being collected compared to, as of today, how it stopped being collected. And so for that reason, we're going to have three categories of people waking up to after July 4th. I would say Monday and Tuesday, most people aren't going to be paying much attention to this. Come Wednesday, they'll probably be snowplowed with work that they put off since to this week. This time next week should begin to ripple in the conversations between those that were warning of this day, those that were blind to this day, and those people that prepared for this day. The uniqueness of the opportunities that are presented in our market for being on GA4 are profound. The value proposition of the data that is now being collected compared to how Universal Analytics collected it is profoundly important. Now, coincidentally in timing, our world of AI and usages of AI and the ability to answer the question of what to do with big data, all this data, what do we do with it? And very few resources were made available to us as to what to do with this big data. A lot of it was algorithmic functions, sorting and classifying and then identifying and then using and then clarifying processes. Here's all this data. What's useful in it? Well, we don't know. Let's create correlations. From correlations, we determine value. From value, we determine usage. From usage, we determine structure. From structure, we determine interpretation. Logically, you can tell I've been in the middle of this for a while. Come up with some crazy ideas. Anyways, so from all of this, we're going to have people that are going to look for their trusty, dusty end of the month report. And there's going to be a big caveat sticky note on it, if it's printed, which usually most of them are, strangely, sadly, that says, this will be the last report like this. because as of July 1st, the report is fundamentally going to be different. Now, when you say that, what do we mean by that? Well, certain numbers are still going to be retrievable. There is classifications of how data gets kept in legacy format. If you haven't set up a method for using BigQuery data, which is Google's storage device, then you will lose perpetually data in general every 14 months. It'll just fall off because it's not retained. You can purchase storage capability, affordable tokens for now, that would allow you to retain for longer than that. And there is splitting of the hairs as to what data truly gets lost and what data still stays for comparative use. It's not all of everything, just like lemmings don't fall off the cliff and everything gets lost. Just aspects and components of it and means of retrieving and using it do. And so for that reason, you have to build a structure that stores that data that's still usable in the formatting that's required. Strangely enough, there's still ghosts in the machine when it comes to BigQuery interfaces and issues with GA4. To say that they would wait until it was fully fixed would be fake, because nothing ever is fully fixed when it comes to market, as you can attest to any operating system that has patches and follow-ups the day after, the hour after it gets released, where once it goes into the wild, speaking of when operating system goes into public use, or software of any type, then immediately from those users, things come up that did not display themselves in the internal testing. And so there's always the revisions. We are faced with revisions on a persistent basis on every technology we use that requires software. GA4 is no different. There's ghosts in the machines that are only being revealed and updates that come along and so forth. But let's break down a little bit of what today means, which, by the way, is our topic today, in case I haven't made that clear. Our topic is, this is the last day of the way that it was, which is very true when it comes to these analytics, and very true as to the types of questions and ways that we will look at data moving forward. So let's break down again what this day means, in the sense of, why is this a big deal? Why is this a change that is me beating a drum about? Universal Analytics, UA, was an acronym that changed actually from Urchin. Urchin was a platform that was built 20 some odd years ago that was really a leapfrog ahead in gathering data in a way that was usable for website traffic. Prior to Urchin, really, Google had analytics that were running to a degree, but the rudimentariness of this, and I'm talking back in the 2000, 2001 world, 99 world, 2002 world, was more like the old hit counters. Hey, we have these many people that hit our website. Fun number, useless data. Then Urchin came along and said, well, wait a minute. There's identifiable things that can be done. Let's follow a person as they go and engage with your website. Where did they come from? Geographic data, because of IP designations, was able to be determined. Time of day was correlated to that. We could see when they were tracking. We could see from where they came from coming to our website. So we're tracking inbound referrals. Back in the heady days of nobody really was abusing the system as badly as they are now, we had ways of knowing where they went to after they left us. We could follow them. And this data was put together in a format that Urchin created. Well, Urchin was gobbled up by Google. Urchin's analytics were quickly changed into Google Analytics. The designations of the codes that were given to people for their analytics for their website, which, by the way, back then used to be server-side analytics. You got your numbers pretty much from wherever you were hosting your website. They provided the traffic numbers for you, just raw traffic numbers, which created the hit counters, really. And that's who gave you the data. Urchin came along and said, well, no, we can put information on your website and we can extract the data for you and use our dashboard for it. And the Google did that, and Google said, we're going to do this for free. Smart move by them, because that put them in everybody's back pocket, or put everybody in their back pocket, whatever you want to look at it. And we've lived with this entity of tracking for a very long time. Now, Adobe came along differently as to how they wanted to create. They went over and bought, I'm sure, and ate up what they wanted to do with their analytics. And they approached it differently. But it never caught on to the critical mass of Google giving it away for free. Why pay when you can get it for free? I'm using the data. If they're extracting data value from me, at the time, we were blind to that value proposition. Like, sure, if I have to share my data with the people that are giving me my data, yay, at least I'm getting the data for free and I don't have to pay very large sums of money to an organization that required high profile clients to be able to get the service. They didn't have a good pricing model. Let's put it that way. So this existed in a world up until today, literally. Session-based. What does session-based mean? It means that we create identifiers that we would like to track traffic by the sessions that it creates. That rather than just randomly following whatever happens, we're saying what happens when they come from these locations? What do we want to track and do? These are called goals and events. That's how user analytics gets set up. We track what we're wanting to know what gets done. If they go to this page, what did they click on? If they click on this, what do they do next? We literally create a string of who clicks on this button. Okay. When they click on this button, if they go here, what do they do here? Do they click on this button? And we follow this, and we've learned the whole terminology. We've come to be so familiar with the funnels and flows and things like this as to following their sessions. What did they do? Then we use cookies, which was a way of leaving a kernel of information with the browser that they were using. So we could see over a duration of time, 30 days, did they come back to us? And did they go do something else? Did they convert? And then we put cookies in our booking engines, our online booking engines, to determine what that actual conversion value was. Let's take the data of the actual transaction, the dollar amount, and attribute it to this session we tracked through and the cookies that tracked their return. For a long time, we were fixated on keywords. What words did they use? Then as the search engines got better, Google got better, which they dominated the space for, it was about not so much the words they use, but the intent of the words that they use. We watched so many revisions in the search pages, search engine result pages, to how Google was trying to be that best and giving you the best answer possible for the request that you had. Our searches went from 1 or 2 words, 3 words, 4 words, 5 words, 7, now 14 words we use in a potentially long string. We even will talk about searches and use multiple words, and we'll get audio responses from our tools, Google Assistant, Siri, and so forth, Alexa. And out of this entire process, the modality of tracking the engagement has remained the same, session-based. We have to define what we're looking for, because until we define it, the data doesn't get tracked. Certain data, and these are just the goals that are set through, basic numbers of people, number of people went to your page, number of people that left your page, bounce rate, how long did they stay? Those are simple metrics, vanity metrics, actually. Useful, but not as useful as they've been made out to be. They're stepping stones to more data. It's fun that I know that somebody came to my website and 60% of them left in less than 7 seconds. Okay. And that data slowly got interpreted. Then Google kind of weaned us off abruptly by cutting them off. Keywords from organic. We no longer had the vision of what people were searching for by words. And instead, they gave us a different interpretation, which was attribution. Attribution was, what are all the things that they did that Google was tracking, because now it was omnipresent in so many things, as to what was the highest conversion based on what you said as goals. You had to understand the attribution had to be defined as to what do you mean by success? Did they buy something? Did they go to this website? Did they look at something? Once that goal was attained, then an attribution string would be created to show you all the things that were attributable to that successful conversion. Helpful at the time, frustrating, but slowly we learned to understand the modality of people's process. It wasn't linear, it was global. It was all over the place as to what, where, and how. And we had to learn how to interpret that. We learned about terminology of attribution models. We learned about first click attribution, last click attribution, frequency attribution, time decay attribution, average mean distribution attribution. All these different modes to try to better understand the value proposition of the channels that were contributing our business. How often did they use Facebook before they finally booked? Was Facebook a big influence, a small influence? Was it just the first influence, or did we give it the last click influence of the last place they touched before they bought something? These were always vague interpretations, and there was so many ways to accumulate this data in comparison to try to create some sort of insight as to understanding how we should change our marketing to better tailor how people are engaged with it. This is not necessarily a rabbit hole. It goes to how we're changing what we're going to be doing as of tomorrow. So this is how we approached understanding the data that was being presented to us. And this was all provided by Universal Analytics in session-based modeling. Some things got very robust. A lot of people made a lot of money making secondary markets of business intelligence tools to taking more of the bulk data that Google was providing, circumnavigate their rudimentary dashboards, and understand it in different ways by taking data from other sources like social media platforms and or other campaigns that you're working on, other things, and putting it all together to see if there was a better interpretation of the data. But fundamentally, the data from Google remained the same. And that was session based. Until you identified it, you didn't track it. 2 years ago, Google talked about their new version of what they were going to do. And this was during the heady days of everybody's wanting to kill cookies. When iOS 14 came out from Apple and said that they were going to block the inherent tracking of third-party cookies, that only first-party tracking, meaning native to the platform itself, your tracking, your information that you were garnering from people coming to your website, and that data was not being shared with another party that would use it to their benefit. Your data was your data. When iOS 14 came out, Facebook brushed it off as saying, iPhone users, they're 10, 11% of our total usage rate. It's not going to really affect our accuracy, our value proposition of our platform. And a lot of that was hyped on their cookie tracking, their ability to connect with their users on their ecosystem in Facebook and target those users with the data that they were stealing from them. Okay. Just like, strangely, sadly enough, Google does as well. And then targeting ads that were highly productive. So people wanted to pay Facebook a lot of money because they could target people better rather than waste money on targeting people that were not interested in their products. That was the value proposition. Well, little did they, gravely underestimate the fact that even though iPhone users may have represented 11% of the total traffic, they represented 60% of the total purchase power. An underestimation by Zuckerberg, one of many. And for the first time last year, beginning of the year, Facebook plummeted, not only in value, but also in users. For the first time, they actually were losing more users than were joining. First time in the history of Facebook. Facebook was always on an upward climb until the beginning of last year. And why? Because the ad spends diluted in value. They were not as accurate. They were not as productive in the sense that they were hitting the right targets because the target information wasn't there to be used. That and Facebook's idiocy about sharing out data to places like Analytica and so forth, and they got caught in the public eye and so forth and so on. So in the reduction of outside party source, third party sources, and in the reduction of accuracy, their productivity for their ad campaigns, their main bread and butter of money, okay, because as we always say, Facebook was free, which means that you're the commodity. That changed the scope of how Facebook does business. They've lost billions of dollars in their changing gear to Meta and so forth. Anyway, not here to talk about the demise of Facebook and or its current status. Just that is a impact as to what we're talking about today, as to what June 30th is about. Google dialed back their timetable as to removing third-party cookie functions from their platform, Chrome, because of two things. One, GA4 was not native to market yet. So they didn't have a replacement to how session-based tracking was actually measured. So if they did, in fact, remove third-party cookies without the ability to do what they needed to do to keep accuracy of their tracking, they would pretty much be facing the same scenarios that Facebook was facing. Their ad production would go down. People would want to spend less money with them because of it, and that would hit their coffers of money. So they dialed back their third-party aggressive, we're not going to let them do it, and dialed up their need to move over to this new GA4 platform. Why do I keep hyping about GA4 platform? Because the GA4 platform is based on not cookies and sessions, but rather data layers, which is why now, instead of keeping data in perpetuity because of Universal Analytics, because it could, there's too much data to keep for free for the user to have access to, I should say. And so therefore, they have a 14-month cap on it. Now, as I mentioned before, there's nuances as to what does get lost and doesn't get lost. And everybody's going to get an education on that in the next few weeks to come. But the purpose of all of this was to put this into a position that allowed Google to now begin to move forward. Probably they're still targeting 2025 to remove the ability of other third parties, the ability to track. So they've now, in a very quiet, not so quiet, but public way, monopolized the data that's necessary for accurate tracking by the use of Google Chrome, Google Search, and anything Google touches, because Google is a first person data source for us. We put it on our websites. Why? Because it's free. And so, because of that, Google, for the rules that they're now not only creating but enforcing, or will be, are saying anything that's not first party data is not trackable. We're not going to let anybody track that. Strange enough, Google is omitted from that because they are first party tracking. They are the source of tracking for the properties. Now, in our world right now, there is still moving pieces to this. iOS 17 has decided to continue in its path that was started by iOS 14, and that is they're reducing the ability for any tracking to exceed 7 days. So it's already capable of blocking Google in anything that goes through the iOS platforms, to saying, one, whether they allow it to track, and two, the duration ability of it to track down to 7 days, which means the data that's collected is only able to be tracked for 7 days to know whether or not there's a recurrence of value, a flow, as it were, a work. When did they come back and actually buy and be able to attribute who did what to where, because we were able to follow them for a duration of time. Because right now, all other tracking runs 28 days, which gives usually ample time for somebody to have been discover it, educate themselves about it, look at it, evaluate it, and pull the ZMOD, reserve moment of transaction, to determine if they're going to purchase it. 20 days usually gives everyone a chance to see where they went, how did they go, where they eventually came to the point of transaction. And now Apple, iOS 17, is saying we're going to reduce that time to 7 days. Doesn't mean that Apple's restricted to 7 days for their ad campaigns. It means that anybody else is. Remember, the world works according to who owns the toy. And Apple owns their phone and their platform, and they have complete control over all of it, including their chips and so forth. So for that reason, they get to dictate the rules as to how all that gets used. Honestly, personally, I enjoy the fact that they are limiting these things to the benefit of me keeping the data to myself, because I'm a huge advocate of privacy data and the abuse that so many marketers have of data that isn't theirs, that they were able to garner legally or illegally. So I applaud the fact that Apple is saying the data is in the hands of the owner, but that doesn't exclude them from using it in that process. You pay the piper. So here we are, June 30th, UA Analytics as of midnight tonight, 12 hours from now, Eastern time. Actually, it's based, I think it's based on specific time. So we have we have 27 hours before it goes off, or 17 hours before it goes off. Anyways, we're now at GA4 time. And as we've talked about with GA4, the difference between GA4 and Universal Analytics is profound, in the sense that instead of waiting to designate what you want to track, Google Analytics tracks everything all at once, all the time. Hence the reason why the limitation of durability for free access, 14 months, because there's a lot of data. Here's the benefit of that. What you think about value in the interpretation of the data that it is tracking is able to go retroactively backwards from its inception, to its inception, I should say. If I have a brain cloud happy moment, a epiphany of people that come to my website, they go through my accommodations, that look at my gallery, they go to a certain promotion, their conversion's at 20% from what I looked at. I want to track all those people. I can see the history of it immediately. Didn't mean I had to set up that tracking like I did in UA 14 months ago. I could look at it for all the data time that I have just by thinking about wanting to look at that data. It's amazing. Some things that are very similar to UA for GA4. The creation of custom audiences are at an inception point. Once you decide you want to track an audience based on the criteria that you created for the accumulation of that audience, it does start at the moment of inception. forward, that you can't go backwards and re-identify those people for creating a custom audience. Something that I learned only yesterday, because all of us learn something every day. I was self-containing the difference of data collection, even for Analytics GA4, as to paid ad campaign tracking versus GA4 tracking. And the difference is minor in the world of what you can garner from it when it comes to creation of audiences. The real trick to this, and this is a bane that we will be talking about in a future live show, is allowing the permissions to a third-party entity to have any means of tracking data on your site. Because even cracking that door a little bit and allowing them to track even just one page means that everything about that page, not just the interaction of their ad campaigns that drove to that page, but anything about that page turns into data availability to them. I had never made that distinction until talking with our team yesterday as to the profound difference that makes. I was always of the understanding that ad campaigns had in themselves only the data that was related to people that interacted with the ad campaigns themselves. That is true, but it's not the limit to the data that is accumulated. The data that is accumulated is the ad pixel that is placed to the landing page of the ad campaign itself, and eventually into the paid funnel itself. All of that data can be gathered by simply having that pixel on there, whether it was interacted with the paid ad campaign or not, any data about that. So in the example I kept harping on and trying to understand it, if I were to geo isolate and reverse isolate a geo area that said I do not want any ad campaigns in this geo market. However, the page that the ads do run to, that go to the website, any traffic that comes to that page would be measured, including the ones that came from the dark spot of geo area that I designated what the ads wouldn't run. I would still see traffic from that area analytically available from my pixel from my paid campaigns, because it tracks everything related to where that pixel is located at that page and any subsequent pages. So when you wantonly just allow silly third parties to say, oh yeah, let's put this tracking code on your website on all pages and in your booking funnel, all aspects, asterisk, comma, asterisk, so to speak, all your data is being ripped. Everything that's happening to your website is being ripped. And when I say ripped, means available to them to interpret, use, explain, just at the same level that you have, with some nuanced differences, like GA4 will have a more granular perspective of data. And that really only goes to the extent of how you structure the pixel for paid campaigns anyway, which is very labor intensive. If you want to get that kind of granularity, it's possible, but as I was told by my team, very labor intensive to define that in such a granular way, and required to put it on each of the pages in your booking funnel, particularly in such a way that the data can be pulled exactly from what you're looking to pull. With so many issues of privacy and trackability and security and so forth, this is the most dangerous thing that you can do to your website, is allow free reign of tracking. And unfortunately, the people that authorize these things and then say for the teams to facilitate that are ignorant to what they're actually asking and the forfeiture of the data that they are so willing to give away because they don't understand. And strangely enough, the third-party people that are asking it, a lot of the people in their organization don't understand the depth of what they're asking their newfound client to do. It's only the people that created the tracking, that created the program, that are looking back going, nobody knows that we're ripping everybody's data. Be careful of it. Avoid it. So back to the precedents of today. So up until June 2023, your data will be able to be kind of used by GA4. There are aspects of your data that won't function. And to be honest with you, there is going to be a moderate grace period of the data usability until probably somewhere at the end of this year. It keeps changing by Google. They keep changing. First was 90 days out. Now it seems to be towards the end of the year. They might even bump it farther given the uproar that this might create, where you're still able to function in legacy data. You can still go back to all the data prior to tomorrow and look at the data the way you did, but nothing's being usable from the July 1st date tomorrow in comparison to it, not as you used to see it. GA4 data will be then your default. And if you didn't set up your GA4 tracking, which by the way, we have been warning people forever that the default configuration that Google has been offering these past few months of, hey, just hit this button and we'll set up the basic configuration, blinds you as to the setup. It doesn't do anything for you. It goes you back to the Stone Age of hit counters and total traffic and silly little numbers. It's not set up for hospitality in a way that needs to be set up for hospitality. And if you're not tracking actually into your conversion funnel for your booking engine with the new GA4, you're losing all of your conversion data anyway. So if you've been under a rock and haven't been paying attention to this process, you will come up to an interesting world tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but July 5th, July 6th, July 7th, when all of a sudden the things that you used to look at on a regular basis, whether you paid attention to them or not, are no longer there. And even if you did set up GA4 and did try to change some of the configurations, the actual numbers, the variances have to now be explained because, as you know, owners and C-level people, they're not worried about how the sausage is made. They just want to make sure they enjoy the sausage. And you coming over and you now show them numbers that, well, that's not the same good number, or that's not the same number I was expecting, or that's not the number that you said you were going to hit. And you now have to explain yourself through the variance of why the number is the same, but it's different because the tracking is changed. And you're going to have to go through the whole uncomfortable dialogue of not having either changed the expectation of the reports, not having changed how the reports were to be rendered, or just blindly not knowing that the change was going to occur when it was, quote, your job to make sure these things happen. I think a lot of people are going to be in a hot seat come the next few weeks when they try to talk through why the company doesn't see the same data they used to see. So going back to GA4 and its functional values, with the data dimensions ability to do things, and the fact that it tracks everything, there are three modalities that are within the system that have to be defined. The closest to what you use to gather data is probably your user data, which is your first click attribution, because it's the most relevant to your comparison to your last click that Universal Analytics has. I mean, there's a last click attribution model in there. There's three models in GA4: user, data, and session are the three platform types. And you might think, oh, sessions are the same thing. Not really. Session basically just goes back to the last click attribution. That's fine, except for it isn't the same numbers that you were getting in the same session-based last click attribution model of Universal Analytics. That one's actually much more different than the user-based first click value that's more compatible. Neither one of those is my first choice or preference. The database data layering one, which uses Google's little black box of happiness, which says we know everything that this thing touched more so than you. And through all the things that we're keeping in our AI and all the other buzzwords you want to throw in there, we're able to assign values to everything in relationship to all that happened for this conversion to happen. Frequency, time decay, first click, last click, averaging out, all the things, we can figure it all out to know what all of the assigned values of each of the contributing channels represent in values of dollars. Here's the good part of that. We're now going to begin to see values in channels that we dismissed as non-direct value because we never could assign, as an example being Facebook social organic. We never could assign a dollar value because it wasn't a direct channel conversion based on last click or first click. Somebody didn't just go to our Facebook organic and click on the button in our organic post and buy it from there. Those that did, thank you so much, but not a lot of them did. Or that it ended up being that at the end of a trail, where after looking at a bunch of other stuff, they happened to be on our Facebook page and just saw the same link again in an organic post and clicked it. Those were exceptions, not standards. But we do know that social was a very hard amplifier and contributor, attribution-wise, to the process of discovery, education, and eventual conversion for people. They used it as a sounding board. They used it as a place of reference. But we never could actually assign a dollar value to it because we didn't have all the combined modalities of attribution to assign a dollar amount that said out of the $1,000 transaction, Facebook represented $311.26. Why did that number come up? Well, Google knows because of knowing all the things that Facebook may have been involved with organically to that final conversion of $1,000. So for that reason, there's a high value to GA4 because now we get to have a better understanding of all the metrics influencing our conversions. We can make better marketing decisions because we have better data to look at. That's data that validates, verifies, or condemns our decision models. That's very powerful and should be well used. The negative is you have to create the structure of understanding the data. You have to create your dashboards for this. Now, Analytics GA4 has its dashboard. I would recommend looking into what now they call the Looker Studio program. There used to be Data Studio, now Looker, looker.google.com, to better understand the variances of creating your own dashboards, dynamic dashboards. What I mean by dynamic means that it's not a static gen report that gets printed and handed out, put in a ring binder. I know I'm dating myself when I say that. But rather, it's one that has pivot tables that are created so you can look at device variances, change the dates, change the source mediums, change whatever it is that you find value as functional, so that when you go to it, you have a current data look at what your numbers are with the latency factor. Okay. There is a latency. Even Google admits that their data accuracy, there's a 72-hour variation, that the numbers can be modified up to 72 hours back because the data has to be assimilated. It's gathering all the data, so it needs to assimilate. It'll report after about 4 hours data, depending upon time zone, and 4-hour latency afterwards based on time zone. But it'll redefine the numbers even for 72 hours out, which in a strange logistics world means that you might rethink your end of the month reports the 4th or 5th day of the following month to give Google the time to settle down the numbers for the final of the month, so that you don't have okay, you reported these numbers, everybody looked at them, and then a few days later, somebody goes back and looks at them again on the dashboard, and really the numbers don't match, and all of a sudden you're being called into an office why are these numbers not matching? What's this? What's that? Give yourself a little grace. These discussions should be had in your C-level and your exec committees. Redefining when you do the reporting, redefining how you use the reporting, redefining what the reporting is for, redefining its usage per department. Revenue managers have a whole new resource tool based on analytics. Marketers have a whole new resource tool on allocation of market spend and redefinement. And gosh knows we're going into budget season next month. So this data will be incredibly helpful in redefining the marketing strategies for 2024 because you'll have better data to look at. And for those that have the data to look at, for those who had set up GA4 14 months ago, for those who had set up BigQuery to store data more than 14 months ago, and to have the ability to reinterpret the data that's from their legacy programs with Universal Analytics to understand how that translates into the GA4 pantheon of data dimensions. You have a clarity on how the number means now compared to the variances to Universal Analytics that you used to use. If you did all those things, you are going to kick butt in 2024 because you now have better insights, better knowledge, better usabilities of data. If you didn't, you're going to be lagging, staggering, and not understanding what you're looking at to know what you should be doing with it. And you're going to get your lunch taken by the people that did. I'm not saying this is but it is a drumbeat. It is on a soapbox of being able to let you know that data has this much influence on you. Look what it did to Facebook a year ago, 2 years ago. Well, anyway. Data is king. Data is powerful. Content is powerful. Context is powerful. All of those things are about the data you're accumulating. So come next week, let's pick a utopia perspective. You did your homework 14 months ago. You set up your GA4. You redefined what you're looking at, the reportings. You defined a Looker Studio that is accurately reviewing the data in the context of actionable items and understandable. You've educated your team and understanding how to read the data, how to use the tables to show data that they need to make decisions of what they're doing. You've understood the metrics associated with GA4. You've set up your BigQuery to retain data beyond just what is being allowed for the free accounts that are created for it. And you've put yourself in a position that you're understanding the data currently. Literally, this day means nothing to you. June 30th was just the day to say that this is where we draw a marker on legacy data. We've identified the data that we want to continue to be able to look at historically. We're all good. We're already moved over to GA4 environment. We're already working in GA4 environment. We understand the GA4 environment. And yes, I'm talking about my clients. And they're there. So What do we do next? You begin to understand the value of GA4. Everything we talked about with GA4 right now is a forensic review, meaning we can look at what we've done, what has happened in a way that's so much better for the depth of the data comparisons and the ability to look at and make new queries on without having to predefine them as we used to. That's wonderful stuff. And that is the first step. I want to hijack Maslow's hierarchy, say Lawrence hierarchy. That's level 3, understanding history. It's not level 7, Maslow's self-actualization or Lawrence self-actualization. It's level 3. We have a grip of understanding our historical activities. It's awesome. That's beyond 1 of a attribution of gathering, 2 of creating reporting, and 3 now is understanding it. That's awesome. The next level up is taking that data and creating forward actions. And that is based on the interpretation of the data we now have available in GA4. What do we do going forward on making decisions of marketing spend? And when we say marketing spend, that is direct correlation to why would we spend in that market? What is our benefit of that? And that comes from a KPI. KPI is the defined value that we're going for. Top line revenue, great. What is the definition of success for the top line revenue variance? I need X numbers of dollars more for the month of September. What is that number? Yours to tell. Let's just make up a number. $100,000 more variance. Great. How does that translate? Where do we get that 100,000? Well, then you start getting into the functional components of determining action items. What's your ADR for the month of September? What's your length of stay? So then you calculate, obviously, your total value of acquisition. 2-night stay, $100 a night. Okay, $200 is the total value of acquisition. Okay. To make up 100,000, well, it's going to be a low number. Let's do this differently. Let's say it's a $300 ADR, 2-night stay, $250 ADR, 2-night stay, $500 per acquisition. So to make up $100,000, you need 2,000 reservations to make a $100,000 variance. 2,000 reservations, 2-night stay. Okay, well, what's your total inventory availability for the month? Say it's 50,000 room nights. Okay, so if we need 5,000 or 2,000 reservations, okay, out of the 50,000, then that is 6% occupancy increase. So what is your annual occupancy for September? Annual occupancy for September is 65. So we have plenty of room to fit them in. So we need to hit an occupancy of 72%. It's one goal, KPI, ta-ting. At an ADR of 250, ta-ting. With a length of stay of 2 nights, ta-ting. Now we have definition to our strategy. That's what we want. Okay, now let's look at marketing sources. Where have we historically gotten business? Now you still have your legacy data from Universal Analytics, so you can see where your geo source of data, your feeder markets historically been. You can look at your comparison of group contribution versus transient contribution, or your sources of contribution, wholesales, consortiums, whatever the mix of business is that you get in for September. OTAs at 3 to 4%, or excuse me, GDS is at 3 to 4%, OTAs at 10%, walk-ins are at 10%, group is at 20%, wholesale and consortiums are at 10%. So the remainder is your digital. Okay, so we're at a 60% contribution for September. 60% contribution for 72% occupancy, which is 35,000 room nights total. We're looking at the fact of 1750, 19,000, let's say 20,000 room nights. We are obligated in digital marketing for contribution, 20,000 room nights. Okay, that is 10,000 total reservations. 2,000 of which of that should be incrementally above what it was before. So we're looking at 10,000 transactions. At 10,000 transactions, what does it take on all of our channels of traffic to generate 10,000 transactions? Well, let's look at one channel, Google Paid. If Google Paid has a total engagement of 100,000 people touch our ad campaigns for the month of September, and we get a engagement of we get a conversion of 2% of that. That's 2,000 people that would convert from our ads. Say 20% of that is purchases. So that's 2,000 people, 20% of that, that's 400 bookings at 2 nights, 250 a night. 200 against 2,000, that's only a 10% contribution to the KPI for variance. That's not enough. What other channels do we have? You see how it begins to break down? You begin to break it down into functional channel contributions based on historical conversions, total traffic, and honestly, the cost factor. How much did it cost? What's the cost of acquisition for each of those people on that channel? What is the cost per click in the cost calculation of the cost conversion? Because cost per click, say it's $1 per click, and you have 2,000 people click, but only 200 people book. That cost of acquisition per property, per conversion was $30. Is $30 a good number for a $500 conversion? It's 8% cost. Is that good? Okay. Is that conversion value worth it at $8? Well, technically that's 7 to 1. So not bad, not fantastic, but certainly not bad. But then, obviously ownership's looking and going, wait a minute, our net profit line is going to be 4%. You're already talking 7%. So that reduces our net profit line down to 1. Still profit, still covers all costs. But this is how the finance of all this works. So you're looking at marketing decisions forensically. That's the level 4 aspect of Lauren's hierarchy of happiness, is using it to actual items from historic value. Here's the level up from this. Better understanding outside of your own data. Taking your data and understanding its value historically to make these decisions we just went through is one thing. Another is to go over and say, how can we proactively look at our data in combination with other data to not reactively look at what happened to us, but proactively see the influences that made people's decisions. Things like weather. We know weather has a huge influence on the purchase decision and on the booking window. Bad weather at the location of origin for the person's travel has a very high influence on their desire to either get out of their market or what have you. Seasonality, market, the demand to your market, the demographics that you're drawing based on what your business profile is for the type of hotel that you are. These are all things that define the idea of how these outside influences of weather. Do you have a lot of drive market for the month of September you're looking at, let's say? If so, what's gas prices like? And what is the budgeting? We've went through these discussions these past few weeks, the budgets that are created for transient travel, the modifying factors of transportation, accommodation, dining, and entertainment, and the influences of how much budget they have based on their gross family income and the average cost it takes for them to take. If you have a heavy drive market, if gas prices go north of a certain dollar, you have a diminished demand to your market because the unaffordability to get there based on the rates that you're asking for. Now, all of a sudden, they might still make it to your market, but they're not going to stay with you because they can't afford to be with you. These are all mixes of decisions that happen in the process of taking your data and outside data and looking at what that means. Like, you look at your historicals production, okay? But you may not take into account that last year gas was $1 less per gallon. So you had better demand and drive market in September because it was cheaper for people to get to you. And they didn't mind paying your higher rate because of it. So your APR calculation of, well, if we got $250 last year, we should get $270 this year because the same people are going to want to come back. And, inflation's inflation. But no, because gas also went up and they can't afford staying with you and they can only afford a $230 rate, but you didn't do that to get the occupancy of 72% that you needed. And now in this case, 74% because you had to adjust for the lower ADR than what you went into for. And those math calculations, tell me your team is having these. Tell me your revenue managers are having these conversations with your marketers. Tell me that this is the dialogue that you have in your exec team to understand what you're doing every day, besides worrying about somebody standing at your front desk and whether a wall got painted by engineering, maintenance factory was done, or housekeeping showed up. What are you doing to drive business to your door that you understand from all this data that is basically tossed into a report that gets on your desk that you may or may not use? That's why this is so important. This whole day today goes from Universal to GA4. GA4 allows for you to integrate other data. Okay. that other data has a very powerful influence on decision models for you. How cool would it be in our future tense with all the buzzword technology we're talking about, with AIs and so forth, and generative text and long language learning and so forth for AI, that we can't begin to understand that it takes all this data, makes all these correlations, and gives you insight to the data in a future tense that allows you to make better decisions now that will have a positive influence in the future, so that you never find yourself reactively going to, why are we not at pace for that? Why are we not doing that? Why are we behind on this? Why are we below revenue goals for this? Now you have all the tools driving you to the fact that you're able to best decide what the future tense will be. Never give control over to the AI that it does everything. Have the AI do it in front of you, and then balance that against your own common sense, accuracy, truth, and functionality. So that's why today's important. Today's important because it's a banner day of transition. This is the last day that Universal Analytics is the primary source of data. Although if you were smart, if you kept up with what was going on, and you must be because you're listening to the show, selfish plug, then you already planned for this, and this day is not a big deal. This day is just a chance to say, yep, I remember when it happened. I remember when we stopped. But for months now, you've been using other platforms. For months now, you've already transitioned over to what was now going to be the standard as of tomorrow. And that this isn't a day of panic, but just a day to be marketed of, yep, I remember that, and it happened, and everything else. And you're going to get lots of calls from people that were not as versed as you, or call to complain to you about how crazy it all is, and you're going back going, I'd like to empathize with you, but I can't because I'm not in the same boat as you, because I already did what I needed to do, and this wasn't a big deal. Hopefully you count yourself among those, and not the people that are going to be ringing on my phone asking if I can somehow fix what's been broken and everything else. So with that, I did want to bring up a little bit of a news item before we closed out today. Strangely enough, it's one that I had to highlight because of my detestment of Performance Max from Google. I've condemned it as a lazy man's marketing campaign. I condemned it because Google is trying to dumb down the process to the point that you don't want to do it. And they prioritize their platform to dominate against anybody that is doing better work, simply because they want people to just give up and allow Google to do it for them. That way they can just take their money. Like, take my money. Here's your money. Here's my money. I want it to make more business for me. You go do that thing, Google. That's what Performance Max looks like to me. Google has made the news, as to be expected. They're placing ads for top brands on spammy chatbot-generated blogs. They are literally violating their own policies of ad placements to make their platform successful, to crush competition, to make it where that is the de facto function of doing ads with Google, is to do it in their program. I've seen, tragically, these types of things being done where it dumbs it down. You can't find talented, skilled people to do the work for you, so you look for the automated version of it. Cody's put themselves in that sweet spot for brands with their metasearch programs. Just give them the money. You have no control over how it's spent. I despise that as well. Don't despise Cody. I think they're brilliant that they were leveraging that silliness from brands to allow them to do it. I just don't like it. Don't like anything that says, no, just give us everything, we'll take care of it. Don't worry about a thing, we'll take care of it. Never like that. Never like that for anything. Don't even like that with my clients. It's like, I don't want you to just give me the keys. I don't want the keys. They're your keys. You give me access with the keys, but they're your keys. And I want you to look over my shoulder. And I want you to ask questions. I want you to be engaged. It's one of my 3 rules of why I will step away from a client: lack of engagement and lack of communication. And lack of trust. Those are my 3. If any one of those come into play, I don't renew with my clients. It's not, if you're not paying attention to what I'm doing, you just, you do the thing. No, I want you to know, not because I want you to give me an attaboy. I want you to know because it's your assets. It's not mine. I'm here to provide the service that you've asked me to do, but I need you to understand what I'm doing for you and need to ask questions. You need to make sure that it's what you want still, rather than once a year later going, well, it looked like we're going to take a different direction. I don't want those conversations. I'd much rather bow out gracefully and say, it's been great, it's been real, have fun with whoever you pick. Sorry, axe to grind, but it's a thing that I see day in and day out with other agencies. They want the ambiguity to just cash their check. They don't want engaged clients. They don't want educated clients. They want clients that just rely on them blindly. And Google's going in the same model. So this article points out be careful because they're actually doing it at the detriment of their own policies. So there you go. Show number 412, June 30th of 2023, the last day that I get to say Universal Analytics is the reporting platform that Google has active as of tomorrow and next week's show. I can't say that because we are now in the GA4 world starting tonight at midnight Pacific time. So thank you for watching me as always on our TV station, Hospitality Channel, which you can find always, if you don't know this, if you're watching us on other platforms, on your Roku TV, Samsung TV, Google TV, Apple TV, Amazon TV. Just look for the Hospitality Channel. The live show is always on the free side of the pay gateway to it. We're like Netflix, you pay and you get a bunch of other content on the other side on demand. If you are watching us on the other channels, Facebook, multiple pages, LinkedIn, one page, my profile page, because LinkedIn only restricts it to that. YouTube, multiple pages. Twitter, multiple pages. Twitch, one channel, Hospitality Channel, for those who catch the media on gaming consoles. Thank you so much for watching me on those channels and following me as well. Thank you for letting me grind into the importance of today's transition. Should you have any questions about what we talked about today and or suggestions or feedback of the show, you can reach me at lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. If you'd like to express in an audio format, we always have the portal that we use for our podcast as well, which, by the way, in case you all don't know, we have an audio podcast, much shorter than the show, about 20 to 30 minute show podcast where we review the show, but we also talk very granularly about tools and techniques of using those tools, much more function conversation and podcasting, called the Hospitality Marketing Podcast. Go figure. All of the shows, this one and on the podcast, are forever in archives at hospitalitychannel.tv. I Love Lucy rerun shows. You can go see it there. Going back to the audio feedback, if you want to give me an audio feedback, go to hdm.news/talkback. That gives you questions that we ask every week. We change the questions so you can answer the questions that are there audibly. You can give me feedback. You can give me comments. You can give me suggestions, and then tell me the permissions that I have to use it. Can I just you say it in context? Can I use your name in context, or do I actually get to play back your audio question or statement to me on the show, primarily on the podcast? So hopefully you'll use that as a tool. We are in 209 countries with the TV station channel, and in 39 countries with all of the other platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and so forth, that we are present in. So thank you all for that. And we always translate our podcast in 11 languages, and the show here, in 11 languages as well, subtitled, so you can catch it in the 11 market languages that we have the highest volume of viewership in. So hopefully that'll help for you. With all of that, my name is Lauren Gray. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and I look forward to talking to you next week.